Is that humidity removal primarily done by HVAC in Florida, or do you guys work with dehumidification systems at all?
The best option anyone could definitely have, if you wanted the best way to set up your system, would be install a variable speed system and add a dehumidifier to it.
What are the most common complaints that you hear from customers?
That is one big issue I will see a lot of times is a lot of people, like I said on the two-story, cut the corners instead of putting in two separate systems, one for upstairs and downstairs.
There's some homes they haven't had air conditioning this whole time.
They're still using it the old traditional ways where they're sticking a window unit in there.
How long is it running? It's running like 10, 11 months out of the year, right?
Yeah, I think our average cooling hours per year is something like 3,800 hours.
Just curious, is that a commercial unit or is that just one 5-ton for that many heads?
It's actually a commercial unit that they are using on it because of spacing on the outside of the home.
For customers that are wondering if they do have humidity problems, is it something where you'll know, or like what are the symptoms of someone that maybe doesn't have ideal humidity removal? Hello and welcome to the show. In today's episode, we're going to be interviewing a Southern Florida veteran contractor that's going to talk about a variety of issues that homeowners deal with in the particular climates as it relates to places like Jupiter or Fort Pierce or Palm Beach County, St. Lucie County. He's been a veteran contractor in this area for 30 years. He's experienced in areas from humidity control all the way to dealing with things like VRF technology and some of the inverter-driven heat pumps that we talk about a lot on this channel. So please help me welcome to the show, Steve Sanders, the owner of Stephen K Denny. Steve, how's it going?
Great. How are you doing today, Howard?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on the show. And I'm really excited to have you on just because you are in Florida is basically one of the meccas of HVAC. Obviously, I've heard it said before that basically Florida would not be inhabitable without air conditioning just because of the humidity and everything that goes into it. So tell me, just to kind of jump into it, tell me a little bit about some of, the best practices or things that homeowners should consider when they're looking at HVAC, particularly in your market, and how that might parlay into other humid climates that battle, because you deal with humidity, you deal with the elements from salt, for example, like in the like moisture in the air and salt in the air, and how that plays into equipment life and system design and all that. And so I'll just kind of let you take it away.
First off, the one of the biggest impacts that anyone can make when they're buying, purchasing a new AC and what they're looking for and everything would be something definitely with the variable speed motors, anything to help remove the humidity from the house. I mean, because that's one of the biggest battles in the South Florida market is, the humidity issues. Because even when it's cool out and the humidity's high, and you want a good air conditioner that can do that. And what I've found the best way to do that is to use anything that has a variable speed indoor fan as well as a variable speed outdoor unit. It just, you get longer run times with it, but since humidity removal is a byproduct of the cooling, if it's not doing the cooling, it's not removing the humidity. So you could essentially, have your house at 72 degrees, but it feels like it's 76 in there on a nice hot humid day just because the unit is not, running long enough to remove it. And it also comes into play is making sure the unit's sized properly as well. But even at that, it's still in South Florida can be a challenge because if you size it for, the hottest day of the year, and to cool down to a comfortable temperature for you, you still want, on those cooler days, like during the, fall to springtime, is still to be able to remove the humidity, because that's why it's important to have that variable speed. So it actually fluctuates when it runs. So, and gives you that run time to get rid of that moisture in your home.
Awesome. And for consumers that are watching that might be in your market and they're wondering, what type of system to get or what type of like challenges to look for. You talk specifically about system sizing and sizing. I think you're referencing a single stage system. If you're sizing it for the hottest day of the year, that's where you're running into problems that's typically how design temperatures work, right? In heat load calculations. But you're running into on those, it might be oversized on a more moderate day when it's like 85 or 90, but still very humid. For example, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So let's say, it's like the temperature today is like 73 degrees out. And so the unit was sized to cool your house down to 76 on an 85-degree day. Well, it's not you know, 85 degrees out right now today. And so the unit isn't going to run and remove that humidity like it would on that 85-degree day. And you'll find that in your home, you're running the air down colder to a colder temperature to try and reach that humidity setting you're looking for on that single speed unit. While if you had the variable speed unit, it would actually ramp down to, say, instead of running at 100% capacity, it'll go as far down as 30% of its capacity. So you had a 5-ton system, but you didn't need it today. So what it's eventually going to do is scale itself down to a 2-ton system and run and get rid of the humidity in the house. Which is also, you don't want to be running a 5-ton because it uses a lot more electricity. On the variable speed, it'll run down to 2-ton, and it actually gets more efficient, and it's not using as much electricity at all, but still maintaining that comfort level you're looking for in your home.
Is that humidity removal primarily done by HVAC in Florida, or do you guys work with dehumidification systems at all? Or is it mainly, because I've always wondered, like, how do you remove the humidity if it's like, because if it's 72, 73 out, you don't really need air conditioning, but you still need the humidity removal, right?
Correct. The best option anyone could definitely have, if you wanted the best way to set up your system, would be install a variable speed system and add a dehumidifier to it too that runs simultaneously with it whenever the humidity does spike up. And I mean, we do definitely do dehumidifiers. I actually have one in my home because it makes all the difference in the world. Because if not, I know with me and my family, I will come home and find the air conditioner buried at 69 degrees, 68 degrees on a 71-degree day, and the air conditioner running and just wasting electricity if I didn't have that dehumidifier in there to control the humidity and keep it at a comfortable setting.
Gotcha. And then as far as how those are set up, is that typically ran on a relay that's specifically tied to the fan? So it just triggers the fan and then runs the dehumidifier, and it's like an inline sort of.
Actually, no, the dehumidifier will run completely separate from the AC unit. You can
Okay.
use the same ductwork to do it,
Okay.
but like say on the train variable speed units, you can actually tie it into the system itself. There's a dehumidification setting on it that'll kick on the dehumidifier when it senses that the humidity, say you want it at 55%. If it senses it gets to 56, 57%, the AC won't kick on, but it'll kick on that dehumidifier just to keep the humidity levels where you want it.
Got it. And as far as how that plays, like for customers that are wondering if they do have humidity problems, is it something where you'll know, or what are the symptoms of someone that maybe doesn't have ideal humidity removal? Do you guys see a lot of mold, or is there like, what do you guys run into?
You will find a lot of people that will initially start with someone saying, I'm having to turn my air down to 70 degrees to feel comfortable, or 72 degrees to feel comfortable, which is a sign, okay, the problem is 74, 75 should normally feel comfortable for the average human. And so when you go and you know that you're running into an issue, that it's not that they feel uncomfortable from the heat, they're feeling uncomfortable because it's sticky in their house. And then when you relay the word sticky, that means moisture. You get into the house and you can run into a lot of issues, especially in South Florida, with mold and mildew, anything like that. From everything down in the house to anything in the attic, you can run into situations with it. And a lot of times if you know what you're looking for, it's an easy to spot. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're sometimes wind up chasing your tail, and it's a pretty simple solution. It's a humidity issue. Either the system was oversized, or they have an issue with the home itself and the construction of the home, and moisture, infiltrating the home at a faster rate than the AC unit can get rid of it. Because in South Florida, we have something called humid attic syndrome, or pressurized attic syndrome. There's several names for it. I've even heard it called the Pascal effect. And there's the white roof syndrome, but they're all the same thing, where the humidity dumps into the attic. Let's say you can be on the ocean, you can be on a canal, even on golf courses where they run the sprinklers every morning on the golf courses around the area, and you get a predominantly southeast wind blowing, and it blows all that moisture into the attic, kind of pressurizes the attic. Now it's trying to get back out, but it's not all coming out the other side of the soffit vents. It's coming down in your home through every hi-hat, crack and crevice in the ceiling also.
Yeah, that
So
sounds terrible. How do you deal with that? And you don't deal with that directly. Is it like a separate contractor that addresses some of the attic syndromes that you run into?
yeah, usually what I highly will suggest a contractor in the area, or if they have one in the area, to come. And actually, the best solution to it is to seal up your soffit vents whenever you run into that. It's almost the only solution you can do. And then isonine or spray foam the attic, the top cord of the truss of the attic, and create like a plenum up there and get rid of the insulation that's on. It actually makes your house more efficient when you do that too. And, it actually will drop your electric bill and everything. But the most important thing is it stops your house more or less from rotting from the inside out from all the moisture.
Yeah, because that will effectively like seal it and bring it into the conditioned space, right?
Correct.
Y
So
Okay, cool. As far as what you are running into with, homeowners' complaints or concerns that you're addressing on a regular basis, what are the most common, complaints that you hear from customers when you're trying to they're in the market for system replacement and they're wanting to fix something? Is it like a hot upstairs, or is it what exactly is it you're looking to address often?
that can vary from customer to customer, of course. I mean, you got a lot of places in the area that, would say a two-story home. A lot of times the original builder tried to cut corners and they tried to AC the both upstairs and downstairs off one system.
Okay,
Which is for me is always a no. 100% you don't do, because what's heat do? It rises. So in
sure.
South Florida, you're trying to cool downstairs and upstairs off the same system. Well, it's having to run a lot longer to cool down upstairs, and now you're freezing, downstairs, and vice versa. Wherever the thermostat is, you're cooling it to the set point you want downstairs, but it's getting very warm upstairs. And even if you do accomplish getting it cooled off to the same level, the upstairs will get hotter all of a sudden until the AC kicks back on. And so that is one big issue I will see a lot of times is a lot of people, like I said, on the two-story homes, cut the corners instead of putting in two separate systems, one for upstairs and downstairs. Which can sometimes be a challenge to fix for customers. It takes a couple of different ways to fix that. One is simply put in two separate systems. Where you run into that challenge sometimes is getting to the ductwork for the first floor if there is no attic space. So it's kind of like, how do I put a system on here now? So sometimes the solution is to do a zoning system on that, where you still keep the same one system, but you more or less make it work like two separate systems, where you put zoning dampers on it that only open up for the first floor when it has a call. You have a separate thermostat upstairs that controls the damper up there. So it works, the unit runs depending on if both zones are calling, then both dampers are open, the system will run. If only upstairs is calling, the upstairs damper will open, turn the system on, but leave the zoning damper for the downstairs off so that you're only getting the cooling upstairs at that time.
Okay, and as far as the feasibility of doing that, are you able is most of the duct work out there, are you running into hard pipe, or do you have a lot of flex duct, or is it a combination, or
95% of South Florida is going to be a flex duct system.
Okay,
You will run into some hard trunk lines every now and then here and there.
okay,
You will run into some hard trunk lines every now and then here and there. If you get into the much, much older homes, from the 1970s, you can run into some metal ductwork there. But what you're going to typically find when you run into that metal ductwork here in Florida is it's time to remove that ductwork, because it has and disintegrated. The insulation has just no longer works on it. And you are putting in a new high efficient 20 SEER system, say, but your ductwork that's delivering the air from it is not providing you with that efficiency you paid for it. You're losing it all in your attic from the heat load that's up there. And so it's almost a waste of your money. And I'll tell a customer many a times, don't buy the 20 SEER, go with the lower efficiency, because it's not going to do you any good if you're not willing to replace that ductwork that's delivering that air.
yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, we always tell people, 90% of problems come down to system design. And a lot of times in retrofit, we run into issues. It varies obviously by market. We see a lot of the 2-story systems in Colorado, like that you're talking about, where it's just one system. For us, it's even worse because it might be in the basement and then it's trying to heat or it's trying to cool 2 stories up. And so when it's trying to do that, as you know, it's basically traveling almost 3 stories and the upstairs just doesn't work. So as far as how you guys address that particular issue in Florida, are you putting in like ductless systems on the second floor, or are you putting in a second system with ductwork normally to address it, or is the zoning the most like popular? Because where I was going with that is out here we don't run into situations where we can identify like an upstairs supply trunk versus a downstairs supply trunk. A lot of times we have finished basements, and so it's not really easy to zone something after the fact. But I'm curious how you address that, or what you're seeing out there.
You run into two situations. If the existing system is in the attic on the second floor, you can
Mhm.
always find the ductwork because you can get in the attic, you can see the main line that feeds upstairs, and then you can always find the main line that feeds down to the first floor. Very simple to do it either way. Put a zoning system on it or add another system because you can get to that main trunk line that is feeding downstairs. The problem is when you run into it where the system is in the closet, say on the first floor. The air handlers
Mhm.
is stuck there. Now the ductwork is feeding the first floor and then it runs up a chase to the second floor. So you have to be able to find that ductwork in there to be able to actually, cut it off where it's feeding up to the second floor. And then you can get up there and redo, but there it is possible to do, but sometimes it may take a little bit of ingenuity as well as you may have to cut up in a ceiling here or there to find that ductwork to make. But at the end of the day, it sometimes it's got to be done if
Mhm.
once the customer is so frustrated with the situation that they had been living with, not being able to handle it, and they've had other contractors in there trying to solve the problems, and they've spent money after money and still haven't got a solution. Sometimes it just takes biting the bullet and making the solution happen for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And as far as, do people prefer that solution over a second system or like a ductless system for the upstairs, or?
Yeah, people usually prefer that solution. The ductless systems here in South Florida, they work great, and I do install many of them. But when you get to the second floor and stuff like that, and installing you have a lot of HOAs in the area, which are very peculiar on property lines, what you can see on the outside of a home, this and that, and you kind of got to follow the guidelines for that homeowners association. And so a lot of times it's better for them and the area that they live that put it in something that is inconspicuous and less seen from the outside of the home.
Got it. And so that would make sense then, why you go with the ductless option more often, because that way you're not having to deal with a line set or line height and things like that, and a condenser.
Yeah, correct. So,
Gotcha. What are there instances where you're utilizing a lot of like ductless systems, like specifically for like ADUs? Do you have or garages or things like that, or what's your use case for?
the ductless systems, you have a lot of people in the South Florida that don't want their garage conditioned. We do it on a regular basis, especially one for dehumidification. Two is just for, people. A lot of times people will leave their cars that you have a lot of, we call them snowbirds that live here
Mhm.
part of the year and up north part of the year. And so they're in the hot summer months, they'll be back up north and they leave their vehicle in the garage and they don't want to come back to it, moldy and mildew or smelling. So they will air condition their garage actually for the dehumidification purposes of it. And you'll do a lot of mini splits on that just to keep it dehumidified for them. As well as you get a lot of areas with lanais that are closed in on the back of the house, a back porch, someone is closed in, flat deck roofs on them. You do a lot of mini splits on those when people are closing in because, and usually they're about anywhere from 200 to 350 square foot back porches that they're closing in. So you wind up putting probably like say a 3/4 ton to a 1 ton mini split on that just to keep them cool back there during the summer so they can utilize it. That's why they built it so that they can use it, and not be eaten alive in the evening time by mosquitoes and stuff. But they also don't want to be out there sweating. So so that's why we put the mini splits in there for them.
And the lanai, so that's completely enclosed. That doesn't have like the screen means that's like a completely enclosed.
They'll take and do like what's called floor to glass or something like that on it. So, which
Okay.
is so
Right on. And so that just makes it so that you can condition the space, but it's just like it's still kind of like an outdoor patio.
correct.
Right on. That's nice. As far as do you guys install a lot of via VRF, like variable refrigerant flow, or VRV type technology where you have, or multi ports or things like that to do some of your zoning or augment some of what we've kind of already talked about when you like go to a house and someone wants an inverter? Are you doing any of those sort of installs or?
We do VRV or VRF systems. Usually, we do light construction work, not too much, but we do it. Usually on you'll see us doing the VRF and VRV stuff on a new construction home, unless it was done under construction previously. Because with the VRF and the VRV, you kind of already have to have the copper refrigerant lines already run there to accommodate for that. But we do see it a lot. We're seeing it more and more and more common actually in the area. You have a lot of homes that will be instead of adding 4 or 5 systems to one of the bigger homes on some of the islands, we will do VRF or VRV in it, so that it is actually you got 1 or 2 condensers instead of 5 or 6 condensers that they have to take care of with multiple air handlers on it. And it gives a lot of capability of zoning, bedroom to bedroom. Even you can get down to every bedroom in the home has its own thermostat, because it has more or less has its own small air handler running off the same condenser. But you get individual control of each room, which is very important to a lot of the clientele in the area. So
Yeah, no, they're definitely nice, and we have a VRF system at our office and also at our house. And with the zoning, yeah, it's just nice to be able to pinpoint it. Everyone likes their temperature a little bit differently, so that's kind of our favorite thing about them. As far as, and I was curious if that allowed you to do what, and it sounds like the answer is yes, where you're able to, because I've been to houses, in the South or like other states, and where, like you said, they might have 4, 5, 6 air conditioners, which is quite a bit. But if it cuts out that need, and on those systems, as far as design, are you guys doing like slim ducted units, or are you doing like full on air handlers, but just zoned off of, one VRV, or are you doing ductless or cassettes or?
I'm actually in the process right now. I'm doing a one up on a place called Selfish Point, and it actually, when you get into the house, I think it's got 9, actually 10 different air handlers on it, on one condenser. You got 3 ductless mini split heads in one area. You have 4, I believe, 4 or 5 of the slim ducted units, and then you have traditional multi-position air handlers on part of the house. So it's a mixture throughout the whole house what you got on there. So
Right on. And just curious, is that a commercial unit, or is that just one 5 ton for that many heads?
it's actually a commercial unit that they are using on it because of spacing on the outside of the home.
Got it.
And the only trickery on that is whenever you do that is you have to have 3-phase feeding that
Yeah.
commercial unit. Sometimes you get lucky and they have 3-phase at the power pole, but most of the time you do not. And then you have to use a phase converter on it. So
Okay. And so you just run a phase converter, and that converts it from single to 3.
correct.
That's nice. That's a simple enough fix. It's easier than dealing with the power company um, to get 3-phase brought in. Well, that's cool. And then as far as are you doing any multi-port installation for like multi-ports, or for like ductless systems where people are getting multiple ductless
Oh,
heads
yes.
installed?
Yes. A lot of times, believe it or not, you will still occasionally run into some houses here in South Florida that do not have AC in them. And I call
Oh
them,
my gosh.
yeah, I call them Florida cracker homes
Yeah.
because I am a
Yeah.
Florida cracker, so,
Yeah.
but you will run into them. And sometimes they have absolutely no attic space in these homes. And we do not have basements here. So
Yeah.
sometimes to air condition them, there'll be smaller homes, 2 bedroom, a kitchen, dining, open family room kind of thing, maybe 1,000 square foot, but we will do multi-taps on those where we'll put 2 6,000 BTU heads into the 2 bedrooms, and then say, another, 8, 9 or 12,000, depending on the heat load of the house in the main area of the home. So we do use them quite a bit. So.
That's wild. So there's some homes where they don't have air, they haven't had air conditioning this whole time.
Yeah, well, they're still using it the old traditional ways where they're sticking a window unit in there, which
Oh,
by
gotcha.
the
So
time
those are
they're done,
upgrades.
they got one in each room, and as we know, those things aren't very efficient. So sometimes they're spending $500-600 a month in electricity for 1,000 square foot home. When if they put this higher efficient 20 something multi tap unit in, it'll pay for itself over
Yeah.
a period of time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, because that's no joke to run those, and they're just obnoxiously loud. I cannot stand a window unit. It's like it's almost
So.
impossible to sleep. So, and as far as like the best systems for your particular, just kind of switching gears to kind of talk about like system choice and the best systems, for Florida. Like, you guys are you installing furnaces, or is it mostly you're running into just like heat pumps and air handlers?
Heat pumps and air handlers. Yeah, if you see a furnace, you've gone way too far north out of my area.
Okay,
So,
gotcha. And then are people using, like, AC with electric heat strips at all, or is it mostly, like, everyone's got a heat pump sort of thing?
where we are located on the West Palm Beach line, Jupiter is. So what you'll find is just about everything south of this line is going to be electric heat strip because there isn't a huge call for heating in the area. Even when it gets cold in South Florida, it's not cold where anyone's turning on their heater. I mean, I've had customers that I've seen them go 3 years without it turning on their heat. And when that one time they go to turn it on, it doesn't work. It's because it may have not worked for the past 2 years. They would have never known because they just didn't have. There was no demand to turn it on. And now when you go north of us here, you start getting into the Martin County and then the St. Lucie County. The temperature can drop a few more degrees there in the wintertime in that area, even though it's only 30-40 miles north of us. And that you'll start seeing more heat pumps in those areas, but you'll never see really a furnace. And even still there, I would say it's probably an 80-20 split. 80% is probably heat pumps. 20% people still have electric resistance heat in the home.
Gotcha. And then for someone who's looking to switch it out, is there what are the considerations that you would you recommend, or do most people in the area like just stick with kind of electric heat strips and straight AC if that's what they have, or is there a benefit to going heat pump if they're not using it that much, like with if they've already got the electric heat strips?
Yeah, in my humble opinion, I don't think if you already got the electric heat strips, and sometimes it's a personal decision, and you have to ask the homeowner, how much do you use your heat? If it's and there may be a few that you come across that use their heat that will, whenever it hits that 68-degree mark in their house, that's really cold to them, and they will turn on their heat every time. And if that is someone that does that, then yeah, it's very beneficial to go ahead and go to the heat pump at that point because the electrical savings they will get from overusing electric resistance heat is worth it
Oh,
all day
sure.
long. But if you're that person that turns your heat on once a year, and maybe not even that, even if it's twice a year,
Yeah.
the cost difference is not going to make up the cost savings, that you're going to see by putting in the heat pump at that point.
Gotcha. And then from a comfort perspective, are you primarily focused on, like, do most people you find in your area, they want inverters, or do people not know and then kind of defer to you guys? Or what do you find people that are like reaching out to you want, like the highest efficiency they can get, or mid-grade, or?
It can be a huge split in that actually.
Okay.
For a lot of people that you get a lot of people that have done a lot of research, and it's a rational decision buying a AC system. It's not an emotional purchase. So
Sure.
whenever it's rational, a lot of people will do their research on it and find out what they want. And sometimes you can read anything on the internet, and it's not always true, even though And so sometimes it takes re-educating the consumer on it when you're there, because everything they were thinking they knew about the system isn't verbatim what they read. But what I find is most times after you educate the consumer and you find out what their personal needs are, that most people like going with the higher efficient inverter systems because it's all about comfort in their house. I mean, at the end of the day, we spend more time in our home than we do our car, but people are willing to pay, extravagant amounts of money to have air conditioning in the rear of their car and they pay a lot of extra for it for something that they're spending a couple hours a day in. Well, you're in your home a heck of a lot more than you are in your car. So, when you explain it to someone that way, wouldn't you feel want to be as comfortable as you possibly could be? And that's what the inverter systems do. They just make it more comfortable in your home.
And then as far as brands, and which brands are you guys primarily selling in your area?
I am primarily a train dealer,
Okay.
and I fully believe in their product, and I've used all products. You name them, I've used them. And I they all have an inverter system, but sometimes the technology in those inverter systems and how they make them, ramp up in speed and down in speed and everything, there can be a huge difference in that technology and how that system operates. And I just find that Train, with their latest products, they're called the XV18 and the XV20i. They do a really good job at the way they run.
And as far as how they run, just to elaborate on that, or the differences that you like, in your opinion, based on your experience with some of the, because you obviously chose to carry the product line for a reason. What are some of the things that you see that customers like, and/or what are some of like the considerations with those particular, the XV18 and the XV20i that you mentioned, that makes them particularly appealing for you? And you can, I mean, even if it's just like installation, I know that anytime a manufacturer makes my job easy, I always like that manufacturer over the super complicated ones, but because that's a communicating system, right? And so,
Yeah, correct. This communicating system, and the different levels of the speeds in like the XV20i, I think it's 170 something speeds that it has in there, from 30 to 100%. And you'll get other manufacturers that will only have, say, 65 speeds. And so you can dial that system in so fine and so tune it so exact on the humidity removal and stuff that it can make a huge difference in someone's, life, that in keeping them, because you can get people that are very specific on their comfort levels, that if it changes humidity a couple percent, they can feel it. And so it's nice to have a system you can dial in almost exact for the consumer that they, and I'll be honest with you, even on that, sometimes it's not our house, so we don't know someone's personal feelings. So sometimes it takes coming back a couple of times and redialing that system in to get it just exactly fine tuned to that consumer and what they are looking for. And Train gives us the ability to do that with their system, and the communicating part of it. They are, as far as working on it, Train comes where you don't even, as a technician, have to put your gauges on that system. It will charge itself. It's self-charging. All you have to do is, hook the refrigerant tank up to it, and it will charge itself and then shut itself off, once it is fully charged, because
oh
it does
wow,
it by.
it
So
has a valve or something that does that
yeah,
during the charge.
correct. So
Oh wow. And that's based on, is it doing that based on like the temperatures and the pressures, or is it doing it based on like line set length when you program it?
it's
Or
doing, it's doing it based off the superheat subcooling.
cool. Yeah, I thought that was interesting on the Bosch stuff. They do something similar where it's based on just your return pressure, or your suction line pressure, and your, as well as your head pressure, and it just focuses on maintaining those, so you're never like in a situation where something's icing up because of airflow. So it doesn't have airflow air code issues. Even though you might, shut too many vents, you can still cause problems, but it's not going to cause an issue with the system. So when you're so on that note, so it's self-charging in the sense of when you're adding, and you're using 454B now, right? You're not on 410A anymore. And all the XV18, XV20Is, those are working. So one question I actually wanted to touch on is a question that we had from a commenter. We do read the comments, but this particular comment basically was critical of inverters, and said that the inverter board is like expensive to repair, and then when that goes out, that's going to be a problem. I mean, I'll give you my opinion afterwards, but I'm curious, what's your take on that, in terms of, is the cost of these repairs a consideration? And like an inverter board going out, is that a repair you run into often?
You will run into that repair. Just like with with anything. It is man-made, so
Sure.
it's a mechanical device. You will have a failure no matter what. But at the end of the day, like with the train inverter boards, everything comes with a 10-year warranty on the part, as well as on those compressors. They're coming with 12-year warranty on the part. So the actual cost of buying the part isn't really an issue because you're not purchasing the part. The manufacturer's giving it to you under warranty. They're warranting it for that time period. So, basically, and then you always have the options when the system is sold to you and it's given to every one of our customers. It's almost always included in those as a 10-year labor warranty as well. So for 10 years, you're covered. If anything goes wrong with the unit, that you're not going to pay. Train's going to, pay for us to come out and actually repair it for you. You still need to have your regular routine maintenance and everything like that done on your system, but at a charge. But as far as repairs go, it's actually very, very inexpensive to buy that warranty in most cases. And even if you don't have it, you're still paying the labor charge for replacing that board, but it's no different than someone coming out and replacing a contactor for you at that point, because it's just the labor charge. It takes about the same amount of time to change that inverter board as it would a contactor or a capacitor, and so it's not that big of an issue per se on the cost of it, because the manufacturer is covering it under warranty. And when you're in South Florida, the average life expectancy of your AC system is only 10 years anyways.
That's what I
Some
was
people,
gonna say, isn't it? It's a lot because, and that's partially because of just how long is it running? It's running like 10, 11 months out of the year, right?
yeah, I think our average cooling hours per year is like something like 3,800 hours,
Oh my
which
gosh,
is a
yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's running
Yeah.
a lot, So if you equated that to mileage on your car, you would be replacing your car every 3 years. If you drove your car as much as your AC and you're getting 10 to 12 years out of it, you're doing pretty good. you know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially depending on what car you drive. I won't comment on any of the cars. We don't need to start a debate there, but I've had some that are not very. I know dealing with vans too. You guys have probably had some that aren't as reliable. So they barely last 3 years as it is these days. Yeah, that's what my thought was. So when we run in, I've never had to repair an inverter board out here, or I take that back. We've had, I think, one inverter board go bad, and um that was under warranty, so it's not a common thing. Our units aren't getting near as much wear and tear as yours, even like as a heat pump climate. It's a lot of stuff out here in Colorado is dual fuel applications, so we're seeing furnaces running and heat pumps, and so it's still not getting near the runtime you are, because I would say we probably have a 4 months of shoulder season where it's 70 and maybe 30% humidity, so we don't have the same the climate battles that you have. But that was kind of my thought, was that it's, for us, it's definitely a consideration, and it might, if you had that repair at the 11-year mark, it might eat into the savings you got from the heat pump standpoint or from, your inverter. But in Florida, I imagine it's the savings, because when you compare, like, let's say an XV18, for example, is that your most popular system, or is the 20 the most popular?
I would say sell my fair share of both of them about equally. So the
Okay.
18 and the 20. So
Okay, so the XV18 and the XV20, that you sell them both equally. Those two systems, I mean, if you compare those to like a single stage, because the minimum SEER you can put in Florida now is like like a 15 SEER, right? 15 SEER 2,
14.3 actually is
14.3.
yeah.
Okay.
So SEER two.
And on the
So
SEER 2, yeah.
yeah.
And then, so that particular system, when you're comparing those two, I mean, you're still getting about a 30% electricity savings. Is that?
For sure. And you get into a home, you weigh it like I weigh it like this. I mean, of course, if you're running a 2-ton system, your savings is going to be different on a 2-ton system going with the XR15 and going with an XV20i compared to going with a 5-ton system, putting in a
Sure.
15 SEER and a 20 SEER unit. The 5-ton, is using a lot more electricity on a daily basis. So in my opinion, always, if a consumer has a 4 or 5-ton, it's a no brainer to me for them. You're going to spend a little extra upfront, yes, but by the time that system is done, you're going to see a payback on your investment, because it's an investment. You have spent, several $1,000s more to buy it initially, but if it saves you double that amount in the life of the system on electricity, plus, on top of that, you not only are saving on the electricity, but you have a system that is making you feel more comfortable in your home. So
Yeah.
it's a no brainer. So
Yeah, and the comfort is because of the like the variable speed nature, right? Just
yes,
because it's
exactly.
modulating and quieter.
Mm. So,
So,
and that's another thing too. I mean, I have the XV20i in my home. Okay,
yeah,
of course, but and when it comes to quietness, I mean, even on the outdoor unit, there have been times where I have been outside on the side of my house and going, my, yeah, and I have to actually go up and put my ear to the unit to hear it running because I didn't think it was on. That is how quiet they can be. So
yeah. No, they're yeah, my father-in-law, they've got the old school, the XV20. I think it's pushing almost 20 years old at this point, which is a miracle that's lasted that long in Phoenix. But they're bulletproof. They run great, and that thing is definitely noisier than it was when it was brand new. But but they are, when you get an inverter, I always tell people you're going to appreciate that a lot more. And then it's nice in Florida too, because out here our ductwork tends to be noisier in general because it's undersized, because a lot of stuff is sized for sea level when it actually needs to be bigger for higher altitudes to move the same volume for the tonnage. And so you get higher velocity, which creates wind noise. And so the inverter, on startup at least, they're not getting as much airflow. And so it's really nice. Inside it's quiet, outside it's quiet, so your neighbors love you. That way when they're like on the patio having the barbecue, they don't complain about your loud air conditioner. As far as IAQ products and what you guys sell out there, I know the humidity, obviously you mentioned mold and things like that. Are you installing a lot of like Remy Halos or UV air filters, things of that nature that like condition or treat the air? And what do you recommend for filtration for your particular market?
for my market, I make it pretty simple for most consumers. If you want the best and thing for your air conditioner for filtration, use a nice pleated MERV 11 or MERV 13 filter. You don't want to go too higher than that, because if you do, you're creating a static pressure issue on your system. In other words, the airflow to that system can move through it. If your ductwork is at all tight, you will cause yourself more issues. So I always say a MERV 11 or MERV 13. Install a Remy Halo in the supplier plenum for the air purification, and then install UV lights in on both sides of your evaporator coil to keep the mold and mildew from growing in it. Because let's face it, it's always the air conditioning in Florida, like we said, have 3,800 hours of cooling. It's always running at some point. Even during the winter, your AC is going to kick on and run at some point. It's going to have moisture. It's dark. It's damp. It always has a food source. All the air in the house goes through it, and no matter
Yeah.
how good your filter is, some of it will make it through. So it can be a breeding ground for mold and mildew no matter what. So the only way to prevent that is to put in UV lights. A lot of people get confused on the difference between, well, why do I need this Remy Halo and why do I need the UV light? They're two different products. The UV light does one thing: it keeps the mold and mildew from growing inside your air handler unit. It does not purify your air. It is there just to prevent the mold and mildew from growing. The Remy Halo that you're putting in supply air plenum, that is there to purify the air. It's an ionization system. You put that in to clean the air as it comes through the unit, and then you have to filter that, in the MERV 11 filter. Anything other than that is kind of going to be an overkill. But if you do that, I'm confident you're going to have good indoor air quality for most of the life of that system.
And are you installing the 4-inch filters, or when you say MERV 11, you'll run a 1-inch MERV 11 where you guys
I'll,
are at?
I'll run a 1 inch. Sometimes the benefit to having a 4 inch, in my opinion, is you can go longer periods of time without having to replace it. It's not
Mm,
filtering any better. The MERV 11 is the MERV 11. You're not
sure.
filtering any better. You just have more surface area, so you
Yeah.
can have that. You can go a longer period of time. And let's say you have to change your 1 inch filter once a month. Your 4 inch, because of the surface area, you can wait 3 months, 4 months before you have to actually replace it. So
Got it. And then as far as, yeah, in Colorado, we're saying the different, we even advise against those. We tell people MERV 8 max out here, but again, part of that's because we're at altitude, and so the systems we're installing are between 5 and 8,000 feet. And so at 5,000 feet, our air is it's 20% or like 18% less dense than at Florida. And so as a result, if you need 350 CFM per ton and you drop that by 20%, just that's already putting you in icing territory. And so we run into that a lot. And people always say, well, why do they sell these? And I think it's, well, number one, they sell them for sea level. And number two, they, if your system was maybe perfectly designed and you change it every month, then that might work. But anytime someone wants a high filter or high flow or a high MERV rated filter, we always have to we always have to go for a 4-inch or something. But it sounds like you guys have a little better airflow there, so you don't have to worry about that as much. And then the combination with some of the you were saying the combination of the UV lights and the REMI. Now the REMI is a non-ozone producing, or they make a non-ozone variant, right? For
correct.
Okay.
They make an LED one that is non-ozone producing and everything. So
Okay. And then on the UV, that's again the UV lights that are separate. That's more of like a surface treatment for the coil. So when people that's just to treat the coil, it's not treating the airflow, it's just treating the coil. So that way
correct.
reduces
Correct,
those.
because on a UV light, a lot of people, and I've even seen other contractors in the area trying to sell them on the pretense that they clean the air, and when they really don't, because with your standard air handler say is going to be 20 inches wide, and that UV bulb that you're putting in there is 1 inch wide. So when you stick it into the unit, you got 10 inches on both sides of it. The UV light will actually clean the air of any air that comes within 1 inch of
Oh wow.
the bulb. Okay, well, when the air handler is 20 inches wide, how much of that air is coming within 1 inch of the bulb? Not a whole lot of it. So therefore, can you really say it's cleaning the air? No, you can't. That isn't its design purpose. It is to keep it from growing the mold and mildew inside the air handler.
Got it. Cool. Well, no, that was all very helpful. As far as anything else for customers that you run into that they're wanting out there, I know obviously you guys you have to be hurricane ready, and so there's a lot of hurricane codes that go into that. So in terms of installation, things staking or securing like the system, is that part of code out there?
Yeah, we fall underneath the Miami-Dade Code, which
Okay.
started back in the '90s after Hurricane Andrew, and so it can be a very strict, strenuous code as far as anything on the ground. You have to have it has to be a rated hurricane pad that you put it on, and it has to have it everything has to be engineered to withstand 170-mile-an-hour winds and not be able to blow away.
Wow.
So you have to strap the unit down, and there's a particular way that is engineered for each manufacturer. Even has their own engineering specs to make sure you meet that, as well as anything on a roof. You'll get into some situations where the manufacturer has to provide an engineering, but in certain situations, in certain municipalities, they will want a civil engineer or something to actually say, okay, this unit will withstand blowing off this roof at 170-mile-an-hour winds if you strap it this way. So there are strict guidelines on that.
And then on the note of hurricane readiness, do you see a lot of people that are going energy independent, where they're like setting up battery backups or generators or things like that?
Definitely generators. Most homes in the area over the past 10 years, everyone gets a generator in the area
Okay.
because, if you have never lived in South Florida on a nice, hot, humid day when you have absolutely no power in your house, it can be, and sometimes after a hurricane, you're talking, it can be 2 weeks. I've seen it be 3 weeks before your
Wow.
power gets turned back on. It can make life pretty miserable.
I
So.
bet. And people prefer that over like solar. Are you not, because you have a lot of sun, obviously, and so those are more better than, or those are preferred over the battery
They
backup.
are. I think because in South Florida, I mean, we're getting more and more and more every year, a little bit more attuned to the solar. But I think it's the cost of the solar at this point in Florida. It can be so expensive in many situations that a lot of people look to just do the generator just because of the simpleness of the cost, as well as and because it is solar, by law, no homeowners association can prevent you from doing a solar panel on your roof in the state of Florida. But you still, the approval sometimes they can make it really tough on people in the homeowners associations to get the solar, even though they can't stop it. And so a lot of times people just find it easier just to do the generator. And, it's, they find it a lot simpler life for them without having to worry about the solar.
Yeah, and it's not that often. It sounds like, because this is really, do you have power outages from like grid issues in the summer, or is it mostly just from hurricane
Mostly from
related?
hurricanes. Very seldom do you have in the South Florida area, you run into an issue from the grid shutting down on you.
Okay. Yeah, because you get a lot of that in Southern California, where it's a funny fact that in Southern California they actually have a surplus of solar, unfortunately, in the middle of the day because they have so many solar panels, and so they actually have to kill the power to the grid. But then 4 or 5 o'clock when the solar goes down, that's when you start having the rolling brownouts and blackouts because the grid can't handle it. On that note, one thing I wanted to point out, and the reason I asked, is now an inverter for people who, if that's what they're considering, that works better when you're on some sort of generator or something versus connected to the grid compared to a single stage system, correct?
Yeah, so it does work very either one. I find works just fine. The inverter works as well on the inverters. You just need to make sure when you're installing one, if you are having one installed, you need to make sure the contractor knows what he's doing on that, because the generators in South Florida, they automatically kick on a tester power, and check themselves, on a periodically basis, depending on how the electrician then installed to set it up for you. If it's going to do it on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, or what have you. But when that happens with what I found is whether it's an inverter or non-inverter, every AC system's now gone to using circuit boards. It's not like the old days where everything was a 24-volt relay. Every
Yeah.
manufacturer, every air handler has a circuit board in it. And with that comes the problem of if the power shuts off and kicks right back on, and the capacitors in that circuit board did not discharge themselves fully, and it happens too fast, it confuses the board. And so whenever you do that, when you install any of these systems on a generator, you need to make sure that it's set up that generator and that the system, it takes 5 minutes for that system to kick back on once it loses power and comes back. If you don't, you're going to run into a situation of the thermostat giving you an error code telling you, hey, I don't know what to do, because it happens so fast it literally confuses the board.
So that's something you program, is that
Yeah.
is like a 5 minute delay on like a power loss or something?
Correct.
Okay. Cool. And then as far as like, and that's specifically that's a feature with the Train products that you're
Uh, yeah,
referencing with
yeah,
the.
and you can do it on just about any of the products. I mean, you can put in a relay to that knows that when it got interrupted. The circuit board isn't fast enough to do it, but you can put in a relay that will sense it, shut it down, and not let it kick back on for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, so this is a separate relay you're normally putting in if you have a generator. Got it. Cool. Yeah, no, I was curious just because, like I said, we have them we have generators out here and stuff because we have high winds, and so we run into it where we'll have downed power lines from just trees falling and stuff. And so, but I'm curious how people, adapt with it in Florida, and that was all very informative. Steve, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you. Where, if people want to reach out, you service all the way from Boca Raton up to Fort Pierce. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
And yeah, where can people, or how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect?
Of course, the website's always on there. It's www.stephenkdenny.com, and that is Stephen with a PH, Stephen, K as in kite, Denny.com. And of course, you're always more than welcome to call, which would be 561-743-9555. 554.
Perfect. And we'll link that information in the description for everyone watching. And as always, if you found this content helpful, please consider liking and subscribing for the algorithm. It's a huge support for the channel and is much appreciated. And we will catch you on the next episode.